You know what's funny? The world will mock your silence until it realizes that silence was the sound of you building an empire. There was a girl once, the kind you overlook in the family photos, always polite, always fine. She sat through dinners where her opinions were dismissed, where her dreams were treated like punchlines, where her failures were replayed louder than her achievements. But while they laughed, she built, not for their approval, not for applause. She built because one day she wanted to look them in the eye, not with vengeance, but with the kind of quiet power that doesn't need to explain itself. This is not a story about proving them wrong. It's a story about what happens when you stop trying to be seen and start becoming undeniable. Because the truth, she didn't just survive the ridicule, she turned it into a company worth millions, and none of them saw it coming. So if you've ever sat in silence while others talked over you, if you've ever swallowed pain at a dinner table full of fake smiles, you might want to stick around. This is the story of the startup she never shared, and the storm that followed when they found out. There was a time, not long ago, when she thought she had it all figured out. Fresh out of business school, sharp as a razor, working late nights in one of Manhattan's top investment firms. She played by the rules, dressed the part, delivered results. The kind of employee you don't notice until she's gone, but the kind bosses quietly depend on. And then, overnight, it all fell apart. A data breach, a leaked memo, a headline scandal that needed a name to pin it on. Guess who they chose? She didn't fight it, not because she was guilty, but because she learned fast. The truth doesn't always win in a room full of powerful men with something to lose. The worst part wasn't the job loss. It wasn't even the hit to her name in the industry. It was sitting across from her own family that weekend, trying to explain that she didn't do it, while watching their eyes say, "Maybe you did." Her father didn't ask for details, just muttered, "You should have been more careful." Her sister poured another glass of wine and said, "Well, maybe corporate life just isn't for everyone." Laughter followed. It wasn't cruel, it was casual, like her dignity didn't even register on the table. And in that moment, surrounded by people who were supposed to protect her, she realized she was on her own now, not just financially, emotionally, spiritually. That night, something in her broke, and something stronger took its place. She stopped defending herself and started planning. Revenge doesn't always start loud. Sometimes it begins in silence. A laptop, a blank screen, a rented desk in a shared co-working space that smells like burnt coffee and overwork. That's where it started. She didn't launch some grand vision. No change the world nonsense. No pitch decks with dreams about saving humanity. She just wanted to build something smart, quiet, profitable, something they could never take away, and more importantly, something she'd never have to explain. It began as a whisper of an idea, a tool that could flag suspicious transactions inside big firms, prevent the kind of scandal that nearly destroyed her. Irony? Maybe, but efficiency? Oh, absolutely. She called it Nova. No flashy name, no social media, just lines of code, stacks of research, and hours that blurred into dawn. While the city slept, she wired her pain into algorithms. Risk detection, pattern recognition, compliance integration. She learned it all because trusting anyone else, that was a luxury she couldn't afford. Clients came slowly at first. One small fund in Seattle, another boutique firm in DC. Quiet deals, no press, and every time a wire transfer came through, she smiled, not because of the money, but because every dollar was one step closer to never needing validation again. Still, she never told a soul. Not her parents, not her friends, not even the old mentor who used to say, "You're too soft for this business." She didn't want applause. She wanted distance, because here's the truth. When someone's been burned enough, they stop seeking warmth. They build firewalls instead. And while her family continued to host wine nights and post about their promotions on Facebook, she built a company with no face, just power. By the time Nova crossed 1 million in projected revenue, she still hadn't told anyone. Why? Because success, to her, wasn't about being seen. It was about being untouchable. And she was just getting started. The launch didn't look like what you see in tech documentaries. There was no stage, no applause, no champagne, just a rented loft in Brooklyn, cracked paint on the walls, a secondhand coffee machine that wheezed louder than it brewed, and 3 laptops running on borrowed time. That was headquarters. The team, small, intentional. A cybersecurity engineer who left his hedge fund job after a moral crisis, a quiet UX designer who coded better than she spoke, and one ex-Wall Street pariah, who no one recognized because she made sure her name never showed up on paper. They called her the founder. Never used her real name, not once. Every wireframe, every line of back-end code, every midnight meeting was done in shadows. NDAs were signed, payments routed through holding companies. Even the legal filings were masked behind a Delaware shell. This wasn't about fear. It was about control. Because if there's one thing the past taught her, it's that visibility can be a liability. And anonymity? That was her armor. So when Nova officially launched, there were no LinkedIn posts, no press coverage, just a quiet email to a potential client with a subject line that read, "We catch risks before regulators do." And somehow, that was enough. One client became 2, 2 became 10. Nova started gaining traction, not from hype, but from precision. The product worked. It filled a silent need in a world of noise. And in an industry obsessed with speed, Nova was built on something more valuable: foresight. Meanwhile, the world moved on. Her old firm replaced her within weeks. Her family assumed she was still figuring things out. No one suspected that the girl who once got scapegoated was now reviewing 6-figure contracts over midnight pizza. And she liked it that way. Because building in silence, it wasn't just her strategy, it was her revenge. There's always a first deal that makes your hands sweat. For Nova, it came in the form of a faceless email from a mid-sized investment firm in Chicago. Nothing fancy. No logo, just one sentence. "We're interested. Let's talk." The meeting was set in a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. Floor 38. The kind of office where air conditioning hums like money and silence isn't awkward. It's expected. She didn't go. Instead, her legal proxy did. A lawyer she'd hired through a contact of a contact. No photos, no last names. Just contracts and clarity. But from the moment the conversation began, something felt off. The client kept pressing for background. "Who built this? Where are your headquarters? Can we meet the founder directly?" Every answer was rehearsed. Every smile was professional. But behind the scenes, she was watching it all live. Audio streaming through a secure channel, notes flying across a shared doc, her fingers ready to pull the plug if one wrong word was said. Then came the moment. The investor leaned back, folded his hands, and said, "You know, this feels like something Lauren Mitchell would have built." Silence. Her heart froze. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in months, not since the day her badge was deactivated and her family looked through her like she didn't exist. But the lawyer didn't flinch, just replied, "We don't comment on rumors. We deliver results." And just like that, the deal went through. 6 months, $300,000. First real institutional contract. When the wire hit the account that night, she didn't celebrate. She just stared at the screen, wondering if they actually knew, wondering if the name she'd tried so hard to bury was finally digging itself out. This wasn't just a test of the product. It was a test of her mask. And from that point forward, she knew something for sure. The bigger the deals got, the closer the past would creep. It was just another family gathering. String lights on the back patio, wine glasses clinking, everyone dressed like they were trying to impress each other. The kind of evening where people talk about promotions they barely earned and vacations they didn't pay for. She hadn't planned to go, but her mother insisted, said it was just a casual catch-up, no drama. So she showed up, quiet, polished, smiling just enough. The moment she stepped in, the questions started. Still job hunting? Thought about going back to school? Maybe you could help with the family's taxes now that you've got time. And like always, she swallowed the sting, smiled, nodded, let them believe whatever made them feel comfortable. But then, halfway through the evening, her sister's husband started talking shop. He was a managing partner now, big firm, bigger ego. Started bragging about this new compliance tech they were looking to acquire. Apparently, it's some startup. Quiet little thing. Not public, but brilliant. Her stomach tightened. He kept going. Mentioned the name. Nova. Said they were close to signing. Called it the future of regulatory defense. Even joked, wouldn't it be hilarious if someone in this family actually made something like that? No one laughed harder than her father. Please, we're finance people, not coders. She didn't speak, just stared at her wine glass like it held the answer to every insult she'd ever bitten back. They didn't know. They had no idea. And yet, they were circling. Her family, the very people who watched her fall, were now inches from profiting off the thing that had saved her. And the worst part? They were treating it like a trophy they deserved. That night, she left early. No goodbyes, no hugs. Just one thought echoing in her mind like a warning siren. They're getting too close. Some betrayals don't scream. They unfold slowly, like a knife wrapped in velvet. The deal was almost done. Nova had reached its tipping point. The product was stable, the revenue clean, and the buyout offer massive. Enough to set her team for life. Enough to disappear. The lead investor was from one of the top firms on the East Coast, known for aggressive takeovers, clean record, ruthless reputation. They asked for an in-person meeting, said it was confidential, said they wanted to meet the mind behind Nova. She didn't want to go, but she did. Hair tied back, no makeup, dark blazer, the kind of outfit that made you invisible in a room full of suits. The office was cold, all glass and metal, no warmth, no softness, just strategy. She sat across from the dealmaker, tall, polished, confident in the way that says, "I never lose." He smiled, started walking through the offer. Equity, exit strategy, non-compete clauses, And then, as if it were nothing, he said the name, her sister's husband, the same man who toasted to Nova over wine 3 weeks ago. The man who laughed when her father said no one in the family would ever build something that technical. He was the puppet master behind the fund, the silent hand orchestrating the buyout. And worse, he knew exactly who he was buying it from. It wasn't business. It was theft in slow motion, a corporate shell game designed to erase her from the very thing she created. He leaned back, smiled again. We're not just buying a product, we're buying narrative. Narrative. As if her pain, her silence, her fire could be rewritten into a glossy success story they could take credit for. Her hands didn't shake, her voice didn't crack, but something inside her fractured. Not because they were stealing, but because they thought she wouldn't fight back. It wasn't planned. There was no strategy deck, no legal rep in the room, just rage and a rooftop. She called her, said, "We need to talk." Didn't wait for a response, just sent the address and walked. The air was sharp that night, New York cold, the kind that burns your lungs and clears your head. When the door swung open, she was already there, heels clicking on concrete, coat wrapped tight like she was still in control. They didn't hug, didn't fake it, just stood there. Two women raised by the same house, shaped by the same expectations, now staring at each other like strangers. "You knew," she said, flat. No accusation, just truth. A beat. Then, "I did." The words dropped like stones. Turns out it wasn't just the husband. It never was. It was her too. She'd known from the start. Known Nova was hers. Known the tech, the silence, the shame. And instead of protecting her, she saw an opportunity. "We could have owned the story," she said. "You wanted revenge. I wanted legacy. Same thing, different style." Legacy. That word. That hollow, gold-plated word people use to excuse the worst parts of themselves. She didn't yell, didn't cry, just stepped closer and whispered, "You don't get to rewrite my pain into your brand." There was a moment, just one, where something flickered in her sister's eyes. Regret? Maybe. But it was buried under too many years of polished ambition. "You walked away from the family," she said. "Don't act shocked, we moved on." And that was it. The final twist, the betrayal behind the betrayal. It wasn't just about business. It was about being erased. Slowly, elegantly, and with a smile. And now? It was her move. She sat alone in the office that night. Lights off. Just the soft glow of the city outside, washing everything in silver and shadow. The place felt emptier than usual, or maybe just heavier. On her screen, 2 contracts. One was the acquisition offer. Clean, ruthless. Millions on the table. A golden exit, wrapped in betrayal. The other? A clause. One she'd just added. One that could tank the deal with a single signature. All it said was this: the name Nova must never appear in marketing, media, or public materials. If they wanted the product, they could have it. But the story? The narrative they craved? Off limits. She could already hear their reaction. "It's a ridiculous condition. You'll kill the brand." This makes no strategic sense. But it made emotional sense. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes it's not about being remembered. It's about never being rewritten. Her legacy didn't need a spotlight. It needed protection. She hovered over the screen, fingers still, breathing shallow. If she said yes to this deal, she'd walk away rich, untouched, unthanked. They'd get the tech, but they'd never get her story. And if she said no, she'd keep building, keep hiding, keep fighting, alone. Either way, she was trading something. In one version, she lost her name. In the other, she lost her peace. So, she closed her eyes and clicked. Then she leaned back, let the silence flood in, and whispered, "Take the product. Leave the girl." The deal closed on a Tuesday. No headlines, no press release. Just a wire transfer and a silence that stretched long after the final signature dried. She didn't celebrate. There was no toast, no "we made it" dinner. Just a long walk through the city, coat buttoned to her chin, the hum of traffic in her ears. New York was still moving, impatient, loud, hungry, like it didn't notice that one of its quietest warriors had just surrendered something sacred. She'd won, and yet it didn't feel like a victory. The money hit her account that night, more than she'd ever imagined holding. Enough to vanish, to start over, to build something new, or nothing at all. But with it came the weight. The team was taken care of. They didn't ask questions. The product lived on, polished, packaged, rebranded under a new name. No one would know it ever came from her hands. And maybe that was the point. But there were moments, in the shower, on the subway, brushing her teeth, when it hit her. She was still invisible. Not because they made her that way, because she chose it. It's a strange kind of grief, mourning a legacy no one knows you gave up. But that grief, it didn't break her, it grounded her. She started writing again, journaling mostly, just thoughts, memories, not for the world, for herself. Morning runs replaced all-nighters. Podcasts replaced pitch meetings. Silence stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like freedom. And every once in a while, she'd get a newsletter from some finance blog hyping a new era of digital compliance. And she'd smile. Not because they were wrong, but because deep down she knew. She'd already lived that era and walked away from it on her own terms. There's something strange about letting go. You expect it to feel like an ending, but sometimes it feels more like a reset. Weeks passed, then months. Seasons shifted outside her apartment window, snow to rain, rain to bloom. And without realizing it, the quiet became normal. She stopped checking her inbox every morning, stopped watching her name get erased from contracts she'd once built, word by word. Instead, she started building something else. Not a company, not a brand, a life. Small, intentional things. Helping a nonprofit digitize their donation system, pro bono. Mentoring a college student who reminded her of a younger version of herself. Nervous but brilliant. Volunteering at a public library's tech night for women trying to re-enter the workforce. Nothing flashy, no titles, just impact. And in the background, her fire was still burning. But different now. Not rage, not revenge, direction. She didn't need to prove anything anymore, but she did want to protect something. One morning, sitting in a bright co-working space full of strangers and startup energy, she opened a blank doc. At the top, she typed, "RegTech is broken. Let's fix it, ethically this time." It wasn't a pitch. It was a manifesto. Because what she realized, somewhere between betrayal and rebuilding, is that maybe she was never meant to be the face of a company. Maybe she was meant to be the force behind better ones. So yeah, she walked away from Nova, but she didn't disappear. She evolved. And this time, she wasn't working in the shadows out of fear. She was working in the light, by choice. She walks through the park now most mornings. No earbuds, no meetings buzzing in her pocket. Just the sound of her own footsteps and peace. It's funny how quiet the world feels when you stop needing it to clap for you. The journey didn't go how she planned. It never does, right? She wasn't the CEO on magazine covers, wasn't the keynote speaker at tech summits or the next gen disruptor people tweeted about. No one handed her an award, no plaque, no toast. But she built something. She sold it on her own terms. And she walked away without losing herself, which in today's world might be the rarest kind of success. And yeah, sometimes it still stings, knowing that others profit from the thing she once poured her heart into. Knowing her family still brags about investments they didn't earn, but she doesn't carry the bitterness anymore, because what they took was surface. What she kept, that was the foundation. They thought success was about visibility. She learned it was about sovereignty. Every late night, every cold dinner, every insult she swallowed like broken glass led her here, and she wouldn't change it, because there's something unshakable about building in silence. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And now, as the wind brushes through the trees and the city stretches awake around her, she knows something deep in her bones. They may never say her name, but every time someone opens a secure transaction, every time a risk gets caught before it causes damage, she's there, in the code, in the system, in the shadow that became strength. If you've made it this far, thank you, not just for listening, but for staying, because this wasn't a story about building a company. It was about building identity in a world that keeps trying to erase it. And if that hit home for you, even a little, then maybe it wasn't just her story. Maybe it's yours too. Maybe you know what it's like to be dismissed, talked over, mocked behind your back, then studied when you start to succeed. Maybe you've been told to be realistic when all you ever wanted was to be free. And maybe, just maybe, you've been building something in secret too. A dream, a plan, a version of you that no one's ready for yet. If so, don't stop. Don't rush to prove them wrong. Don't waste your energy begging to be seen. Build in silence. Move with intention. And when it's time, let the work speak for itself. They'll either applaud or pretend they always believed in you. Either way, you won't need them. And if this story meant something to you, if it made you feel a little less alone, hit that like button. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're building, even if no one sees it yet. And if you want more stories like this, stories that cut deeper, that don't tie everything up with a pretty bow, hit subscribe, because around here, we tell the truth, even the kind that hurts, especially the kind that heals. I'm glad you found this one. See you in the next.